Ashley carefully placed her cup of tea on the coaster and looked around her apartment with satisfaction. The morning light flooded the spacious living room, casting reflections on the glossy surfaces of the furniture she had so carefully chosen 5 years ago. This apartment had once been just a dream, unreal, almost unattainable, for a 24-year-old woman just starting her career as a graphic designer. And now she was here, in her own corner of the world, for which she had poured so much effort. Ashley's gaze settled on a photograph in a simple wooden frame, her first day in the new apartment. In the photo, she stood in the middle of an empty room, keys in hand, wearing an incredibly happy smile. Back then, there was nothing here but bare walls and her suitcase. I wonder if John realizes what it cost me, Ashley thought as she rose from the sofa and headed to the kitchen to pour herself more tea. 3 years of saving on everything, even skipping outings with friends at cafes, replacing them with get-togethers in a rented room. Night and weekend side jobs while others rested. Lunches brought from home in containers instead of business lunches with colleagues. A mortgage funded with the inheritance from her grandmother, not huge, but carefully saved exactly for this purpose. And now, 5 years later, she had not only paid off more than half of the loan but had also made the apartment truly her own. Every detail of the interior had been thoughtfully considered by Ashley, from the placement of outlets to the shade of the parquet flooring. She remembered how, saving on professional help, she assembled furniture with friends and how she searched for vintage accessories at flea markets and second-hand stores to give the space personality. In the corner of the living room stood a small desk, which she had turned into a workspace. This was where projects were born that allowed her to establish herself in a temporary but promising design studio. Here, she also worked on personal orders that brought in extra income. Ashley smiled, recalling the first time John stepped into her apartment. It had been almost a year ago, 6 months after they met at a mutual friend's birthday party. Back then, he wandered through the rooms for a long time, examining every detail. "You've created a real home. I can feel that every inch of this place carries a piece of you." It was nice to hear. John had a way of saying the right things at the right moment. It was largely this quality that had attracted Ashley when they first met, the ability to listen and speak exactly what was needed. She poured herself a fresh cup of tea and returned to the living room, where a planner lay on the coffee table with a detailed checklist. Tomorrow. Tomorrow she would become John's wife. The thought made her chest tighten, a mixture of excitement, joy, and anxiety that, she supposed, every bride feels on the eve of her big day. They had met at Ben's birthday party. Ashley had studied with Ben at university. John was Ben's friend from the gym. Tall, attractive, he didn't stand out in the crowd for anything in particular, but there was something magnetic about him, an air of solidity, reliability. When Ashley talked about her work, he listened with genuine interest, asking smart questions. That evening, they exchanged numbers, and the very next day John called to invite her on a date. Over the 2 years of their relationship, Ashley came to know John as a calm and thoughtful person. He worked as an engineer at a construction company and had a stable income. Unlike Ashley, however, he didn't own a place of his own. He rented a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. As their relationship became serious, John stayed at Ashley's more and more. A year later, he had practically moved in with her, though he technically kept his rental apartment. The proposal hadn't surprised Ashley. They had discussed their future together multiple times, and it was more a question of when rather than if. John made it beautiful, a restaurant overlooking the river, a ring produced at the most unexpected moment, and sincere words of love. Ashley said yes without hesitation. The perfect couple, a caring fiancé with serious intentions. The wedding preparations had taken almost 6 months. They chose the restaurant and the menu together, went to cake tastings, discussed the guest list and the evening program. Ashley herself designed the invitations and found a photographer through professional connections. She chose the wedding dress with her mother and best friend Brittany. She also organized the guest transfers and booked the hotel room for their first night as a married couple. Everything went smoothly, without major disagreements. Only occasionally did Ashley catch herself thinking that John seemed somewhat detached regarding certain details that mattered to her. She attributed this to the difference between male and female perceptions of weddings and his busy work schedule. The last days before the wedding had turned into a real marathon. She needed to pick up her dress from the atelier after the final fitting, check the readiness of the rings, call the toastmaster to confirm the program, and reconfirm the restaurant reservation. The to-do list seemed only to grow. Even though Ashley methodically checked items off her planner, the feeling that there was always something urgent and important left undone never left her. John had stayed late at work that evening, saying he had stopped by his mother's. Ashley didn't press for details. His mother really did have health problems and often called him for help, sometimes for medicine, sometimes for fixing household appliances. John returned late, when Ashley was already getting ready for bed. He was strangely quiet and distracted. He answered questions with short replies. When she asked about his mother, he grumbled that everything was fine and quickly went to the shower. When he lay down beside her, Ashley felt tension. He lay too straight, too still, as if afraid to move. She decided not to disturb him with questions. "We'll figure it out tomorrow. We both need rest." But even at breakfast, John continued to act oddly, sometimes freezing with a cup of coffee in his hand, staring at a single spot, other times shifting items on the table for no reason. When Ashley asked, "Is everything okay?" he forced a smile and said he was just nervous about the wedding. Now, sitting with the checklist in her hands, Ashley recalled his behavior again. It was completely uncharacteristic of her usually calm and composed fiancé, and it began to worry her. She put the planner aside and sipped her tea. At that moment, John appeared in the doorway of the living room with such a determined look that Ashley involuntarily straightened up. "We need to talk," he said in an unusually serious tone. Of course, Ashley gestured to the space next to her on the sofa. "Sit down. You're acting strange today. Did something happen?" John stayed standing, nervously tapping his fingers on the doorframe. "You see," he hesitated, then, as if having made up his mind, blurted out in one breath, "Darling, in my family, there's a tradition, only men can own property. So you need to transfer your apartment to me." At that moment, Ashley took a sip of tea, choked, and started coughing. The hot liquid burned her throat, but the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the shock of what she had just heard. She placed the cup on the table, still coughing, trying to process his words. "What?" she finally managed to say. "John, are you joking?" But from his expression, Ashley realized this was no joke. John stood there, fists clenched, with a strange mixture of determination and uncertainty on his face. "No, I'm not joking," he finally said. He approached and sat across from her in the armchair, not on the sofa beside her as usual. "This is serious. In my family, the man is the head of the household, and all property must be registered in his name." Ashley stared at him, trying to determine if he had lost his mind. It was so absurd, so inconsistent with everything she knew about John, that her first reaction was disbelief. "John, in 2 years of being together, you've never once mentioned such a tradition." Ashley made air quotes with her fingers. "And now, the day before the wedding, you suddenly bring it up?" John clearly felt awkward. "I didn't want to worry you ahead of time. I thought when the time came, you'd understand." "Understand what?" Ashley's voice began to rise. "That I should just hand over the apartment I earned over years?" "John, are you out of your mind? It's not just handing it over." He also began to raise his voice. "We're getting married tomorrow. We'll be a family. What difference does it make whose name the apartment is under?" "If it makes no difference," Ashley countered, feeling anger rising inside her, "then why don't you transfer something of yours to me?" "Oh, right, you don't have anything." That was a low blow. Ashley immediately regretted her words as they left her mouth. John's face darkened. Exactly, I have nothing. And now you're going to reproach me for that? I thought we were above material matters. I'm not a beggar. I'm not reproaching, Ashley tried to soften her tone. I'm just trying to understand the logic. You never mentioned such a tradition. We never discussed that after the wedding I should give up ownership of my apartment. This is a serious decision, John. It can't be made at the last minute. John sighed, as if explaining something simple to a child who didn't understand. Ashley, it's just a formality. Nothing will change for you. We'll live here together. Everything will be as before. The documents will just be in my name, as the head of the family. Ashley couldn't believe her ears. Formality? John, we're talking about real estate worth millions. This is not a formality, it's a serious legal action with far-reaching consequences. She looked carefully at her fiancé, trying to understand what was happening. John had never shown such archaic views before. He had always seemed like a modern man, respecting her independence and professional achievements. Is this because of your visit to your mother? Ashley guessed. Did she put this idea in your head? From the way John's face twitched, she knew she had hit the mark. What does Mom have to do with this? He protested weakly. This is between you and me. Then let's call her now and ask. Ashley reached for her phone. John grabbed her hand. Don't bother her, he said hastily. Okay, yes, we talked about it yesterday. Mom reminded me of the family tradition. All women in our family transfer their property to their husbands. My grandmother did it, my mother too. And how happy are they? Ashley replied sarcastically, freeing her hand. Especially your mother, who lives in a one-bedroom apartment even though your father has a respectable position. That was another blow, but Ashley could no longer hold back. John's parents had always evoked mixed feelings in her. His father, Gregory, worked as a chief engineer at a large company, yet the family lived modestly. His mother, Dolores, was a housewife with a domineering personality, who, however, became the embodiment of maternal care in front of her son. Ashley had visited them several times and always felt uncomfortable under his future mother-in-law's scrutinizing gaze. Don't you dare speak like that about my family. John slammed his fist on the table, making the cups jump. They live the way they want. Okay, I'm sorry. Ashley realized she had gone too far. But understand me too. You're putting me in a position to make a serious decision without discussion, without preparation, literally on the eve of our wedding. That's unfair, John. He calmed slightly and sat back in the armchair. I understand this is sudden. But think about it, we are a family, one unit. All our property will be shared. What difference does it make who it's formally registered under? It's just a nod to tradition. If it's just a nod to tradition, Ashley tried to stay calm, then why don't we establish joint ownership? Or sign a prenuptial agreement that protects both our interests? John shook his head. No. That's not in keeping with tradition. Everything must be under the husband's name. And you think I'll just agree to that? Why not? He looked at her. If you love me and trust me, what's the problem? John asked with genuine bewilderment. Ashley took a deep breath. Conflicting emotions battled inside her. On one hand, she truly loved and trusted John. On the other, the demand to transfer the apartment seemed so absurd, so inconsistent with what she knew of him, that it made her question their relationship. John, let's postpone this conversation. Our wedding is tomorrow. We both need to calm down. No, he interrupted. We must resolve this now. Mom said, he faltered, realizing he had said too much. So it really comes from your mom? Ashley shook her head. What did she say? Go on, tell me. John pressed his lips together, then decided to speak. Mom said that if you refuse to follow our family tradition, it would mean that you don't respect our values. And that in that case, you shouldn't marry me, Ashley finished for him, feeling a chill spread through her. John didn't answer, but his silence spoke louder than words. So you're giving me an ultimatum? Ashley stated. Either I transfer the apartment, or there's no wedding. I'm just asking you to respect my family's traditions. John exclaimed. Is it really that difficult? If you love me, you should understand. Ashley stood and walked to the window. Outside, it was an ordinary day. People hurried along their business, cars passed by, the sun was shining. And here, in this room, something she had considered solid and real was crumbling. You know what's strange, John? She said without turning. In 2 years, you never once mentioned this important family tradition. Not once even hinted that you would demand I give up ownership of my apartment. Why? Why now, the day before the wedding? She turned and saw John looking at the floor, avoiding her gaze. Maybe because you were afraid I'd refuse to marry you if I knew earlier? She continued. Or because your mother decided that now, when everything is ready for the wedding, it would be harder for me to refuse. Tell me, John, whose idea was it to wait until the last moment? You're misunderstanding everything, he mumbled. It's not some clever plan. It just happened. Happened? Ashley smiled bitterly. Yesterday you were at Mom's, and today you suddenly remember the family tradition. Quite a convenient coincidence. John stood up sharply. You know what? Let's call Mom. She can explain it better than I can. Without waiting for Ashley's response, he pulled out his phone, dialed the number, and put it on speaker. On the third ring, Dolores answered. Her voice sounded as if she had been expecting this call. Yes, dear, is everything all right? Mom, I'm talking with Ashley about our family tradition regarding property. She doesn't understand why it's so important. Ashley opened her mouth to argue, but Dolores's voice cut her off. There were tones in it she had never heard before, commanding, almost aggressive. Ashley, dear, did John explain to you that in our family, men are responsible for all material things? It's our tradition, followed for generations. I, too, once transferred my apartment to my husband, and we've lived happily for so many years. Excuse me, Ashley tried to stay polite, but times have changed. There's no need to follow such outdated customs. Besides, I spent years earning this apartment. Exactly, dear, Dolores's voice turned sickly sweet. You've already proven that you can earn. Now it's time to prove that you can trust and love. All the wives in our family went through this. If you really love my son, it shouldn't be a problem for you. Ashley felt anger boiling inside her. This woman, whom she had seen only a few times in her life, was trying to manipulate her feelings, framing her refusal to transfer the apartment as proof of insufficient love. Love and trust aren't measured by your willingness to give away property, Ashley said firmly. And I think the real traditions of your family are mutual respect and care, not transferring ownership rights. Oh! Such big words. Dolores's voice turned mocking. Mutual respect, care, and reality, you just don't want to give in over a trifle. My sister-in-law resisted at first too, but then she understood that family is more important than material goods. And you know what? She's been with her husband for 40 years, and she never regretted her decision. Ashley looked at John, who sat with a look that made it clear this situation was unpleasant for him, but he couldn't do anything about it, as if he were a witness rather than a participant in the conversation. Dolores, Ashley said, deciding to clarify things once and for all, honestly, this is your idea, to demand I transfer my apartment right before the wedding? There was a pause. Then Dolores replied with unmistakable irritation. What, You think my son can't make decisions for himself? He's the head of the family, and he decides what's best. I just reminded him of the traditions he apparently forgot, being so taken with your looks. Dolores, am I wrong? You're kneeling there begging her, and she's turning her nose up. Are you a man or what? Put her in her place. Tell her that if she doesn't transfer the apartment, there will be no wedding. The wait for his reaction became the moment of truth. Whose side would he take? Support her right to manage her own property or side with his mother and her archaic demands? John looked up and met Ashley's gaze. There was a strange expression in his eyes, a mix of uncertainty, shame, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Mom, we'll call you back, he said, and without waiting for a reply, hung up. A heavy silence filled the room. Ashley expected John to apologize for his mother's behavior, to say she was exaggerating the importance of this tradition, that it wasn't really that important. But he remained silent, staring at the darkened phone screen. Well? Ashley couldn't hold back. What do you say? John looked at her. To her surprise, there was determination in his eyes. Mom's right, he said firmly. It's our family tradition, and you must respect it. If you love me, you'll transfer the apartment. If not, maybe we shouldn't get married. The words hit Ashley like a slap. Everything fell into place. This wasn't a sudden whim or an impulsive demand. It was a well-planned move, designed so that on the eve of the wedding, when everything was already prepared, invitations sent, and services paid for, she wouldn't be able to refuse. Ashley slowly sank onto the couch, feeling a strange calm. Now that the cards were on the table, it felt easier. Small details that she hadn't paid attention to before came back to her mind. How once John asked if she had fully paid off her mortgage. How carefully he had studied the apartment documents when she was looking for an insurance policy. How his mother had critically inspected the apartment at their first meeting and asked how much it might be worth at current prices. Let's make this clear, Ashley said calmly. You're giving me an ultimatum. Either I transfer the apartment to you, or there will be no wedding. John flinched at the word ultimatum, but nodded. Yes. This is a matter of principle for me and my family. Fine, Ashley stood up. I need time to think. This is a serious decision. What time? Irritation crept into John's voice. The wedding is tomorrow. We need to decide now. We can go to the notary today. No, John, Ashley said firmly. I will not make such a decision under pressure. I need to think it through. She headed toward the door, but John blocked her path. Where are you going? We're not finished talking. I'm going to the bedroom, Ashley replied calmly. I need to be alone. No. He grabbed her hand. We'll decide this right now. Ashley looked at his fingers gripping her wrist and suddenly realized she didn't know this man at all. The John she had lived with for almost a year had never behaved this way. He had been gentle, accommodating, always ready to compromise. But now, standing before her, was a completely different man, with a hard gaze and authoritative manners. Let go of me, she said quietly but firmly. Something in her voice made John obey. He unclenched his fingers and stepped back. Sorry, he muttered. It's just this is important to me. Ashley silently passed him and closed the bedroom door. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she stared out the window, trying to organize her thoughts. From outside the door came John's footsteps. He was pacing the living room, probably not knowing what to do next. Ashley picked up her phone and opened Brittany's contact, her best friend. She wanted to call, to tell her everything, to ask for advice, but then she put the phone down. No, this decision was hers alone. Ashley lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. Snippets of thoughts, memories, and doubts swirled in her head. 2 years of a relationship, 1 year living together, she had believed she knew John, understood him. shared his values. And now it turned out that he had hidden important things from her, or, worse, that they simply hadn't mattered to him until his mother intervened. Other little things came to mind: how John hadn't been very interested in her professional achievements, brushing them off with phrases like "good job," "keep it up," how he never asked about her career plans, how reluctantly he discussed having children, always redirecting the conversation to "we need to get on our feet first." And there had been other signs. Every time they met, Dolores emphasized that a woman's main role was to create a cozy home for her husband and not interfere with his career ambitions. John's father had always remained distant, as if somewhere far away, occasionally inserting a phrase like, "whatever your mother says goes." She remembered once when John remarked, "It would be nice if after the wedding you cut back on your working hours to spend more time together." At the time, Ashley had seen it as a loving gesture, a desire to be close. Now, the comment took on a very different meaning. Gradually, a picture formed in her mind: the apartment, her property. Perhaps he even genuinely loved her, but his mother, learning about the wedding, decided to help her son secure a material advantage. And he had been too weak to resist her influence. Or, worse, it had been his plan from the start to find a girl with her own apartment and marry her, taking possession of her property through marriage. Ashley opened her eyes and sat on the bed. No, it was much simpler. It didn't matter whether this was John's original plan or his mother's idea. What mattered was that at the critical moment, he chose not her, but the apartment. He was willing to break a 2-year relationship, cancel a wedding that had required so much effort and money, just to get the property. What kind of love was that? This was proof. She remembered something else. John, constantly complaining about a lack of money, sent his mother a large sum every month for medicine and help. Yet Ashley had never once seen Dolores looking sick or in need. On the contrary, every time she met them, Dolores was perfectly groomed, with styled hair, manicured nails, and new clothes. Ashley stood and walked over to the window. Outside, life went on as usual. People hurried about their business, unaware of the drama unfolding in her apartment. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and yet now she faced a choice: give in to an absurd demand or break off the relationship on the eve of the wedding. There was a knock at the door. "Ashley," John's voice sounded conciliatory. "Maybe we can continue our conversation. I know this is unexpected for you, but let's discuss everything calmly." Ashley took a deep breath and opened the door. John stood there with a guilty expression, holding out a cup of tea. "Peace?" he offered with a smile that had once seemed so sincere and warm. Ashley took the cup and walked past him into the living room. Sitting on the couch, she took a sip and said, "I've thought about your proposal." John immediately brightened, sat down next to her, and took her hand. "So you realize I'm right?" Ashley gently freed her hand. "John, I cannot transfer the apartment to you." His face changed instantly, the smile vanished, and his eyes narrowed. "So you're choosing the apartment over me?" he asked sharply. "No," Ashley replied calmly. "Ashley, I'm choosing respect for myself and my decisions. I spent years buying this apartment. It is the result of my work, my sacrifices, my responsibility. I am not willing to give it up at the demand of someone who thinks they have a right to it just because they are a man." "Don't twist my words," John shouted. "It's not about being a man, it's about family tradition. A tradition where a woman must give her property to a man just because he is a man?" Ashley retorted. "Call it what you want, the essence doesn't change." John jumped to his feet. "So you don't trust me? You think I'll take your precious apartment and throw you out on the street?" "It's not about trust," Ashley said wearily. "It's about principle. I will not give up ownership of what I earned through my work just to conform to someone's idea of what a family should look like. You're just selfish." John burst out. "You only think about yourself. What about me? What about our relationship?" Ashley smiled bitterly. You put our relationship at risk yourself by issuing this ultimatum. You said it yourself, if I don't transfer the apartment, there will be no wedding. So don't try to turn everything upside down. John paced the room like a trapped animal. You've misunderstood. I just wanted to follow my family's traditions. What's wrong with that? Nothing, Ashley said. Except that these traditions require me to give up my property. Sorry, but I'm not doing that. I thought you loved me. John stopped abruptly and looked at her accusingly. But it turns out you only love your apartment. Ashley shook her head. No, John. I loved you, the person I thought I knew. A person who respected me, my achievements, my independence. But now, in front of me, stands a completely different man, willing to end the relationship if I don't meet his demands. I don't know this man. And, honestly, I don't want to know him. John froze, absorbing her words. Then his face twisted in anger. Fine. So it's like this, he ground through his teeth. You choose the apartment, and I choose my family and our traditions. There will be no wedding. A heavy weight seemed to fall from Ashley that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. So be it, she said quietly. John clearly expected a different reaction, tears, pleading, attempts to change his mind. When none came, he grabbed his phone and quickly dialed a number. Mom? He said, turning away from Ashley. You were right. She refused. Yes, I already told you no. Ashley couldn't hear what Dolores was saying, but from John's changing expression, she understood that the conversation was not going the way he had expected. But, Mom, how am I supposed to? No, I understand, but all right, I get it. He hung up and turned to Ashley, his face a mix of confusion and anger. What's wrong? She asked. Didn't Mom approve of your decision? None of your business. He snapped. But there will be no wedding, that's clear. And you'll regret this. Ashley shrugged. I highly doubt I'll regret 2 years spent on a relationship with someone who turned out to be not who I thought he was. But I will never regret my decision not to give up my apartment. John stood in the middle of the room, clearly unsure what to do next. He had lost control and now looked both angry and lost. So what now? He finally asked. Now you pack your things and leave, Ashley replied calmly. And I'll take care of canceling the wedding. You're kicking me out? Our wedding is tomorrow, and you're just throwing me out on the street? You're renting the apartment, Ashley reminded him. And yes, I want you to leave today. I need space and time to think and decide what to do next. John looked at her in disbelief, which gradually turned into anger. You know I didn't expect this from you, he said. I thought we loved each other. And you. And I did love you, Ashley cut him off. Until I realized that for you, our relationship was just a way to get an apartment. That's not true. John exclaimed. I love you. I just care about family traditions. So much that you're willing to break up if I don't comply. Ashley asked. Strange kind of love, don't you think? John opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. Ashley was tired. Listen, let's not turn this into an endless argument. It's obvious we have different values and priorities. You chose your traditions, I chose my independence. That's where we part ways. John stood for a few more seconds, staring at her fiercely, then abruptly turned and went to the bedroom. 15 minutes later, he came out with 2 hastily packed bags. I'll get the rest later, he said. As you wish, Ashley replied evenly. Leave the keys on the table. He silently placed the keyring down, gave her a long look as if expecting her to change her mind at the last moment. But Ashley simply waited in silence until he left. You'll regret this, he said finally. You'll realize what you've lost. Goodbye, John, Ashley said quietly, opening the door. He lingered on the threshold for a few seconds, then picked up the bags and left without looking back. Ashley closed the door and leaned against it, feeling tears streaming down her cheeks. Not tears of regret over her decision, but tears of exhaustion and disappointment. 2 years of a relationship, a year of living together, almost 6 months of wedding preparations, all ended over a ridiculous demand made a day before the ceremony. Ashley looked at the clock. It was only 11 a.m. It felt like an eternity since John had blurted out his family tradition line. She walked into the living room and picked up her phone, deciding it was time to inform her parents of what had happened. But first, she called Brittany. She needed her best friend's support. Brittany answered on the first ring. "Hey, bride-to-be. How's the mood before the big day?" Ashley took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in her voice. "Brittany, there's no wedding." On the other end of the line, genuine astonishment. "What happened? Are you sick?" "John, we broke up," Ashley replied briefly. There was stunned silence. "Brittany, can you come over?" Ashley asked quietly. "I need your help." "I'm on my way," Brittany replied without question. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. While waiting for her friend, Ashley started mentally making a list of organizational tasks: cancel the restaurant reservation, inform the photographer, send messages to the guests. Incredibly, making those lists calmed her down a little. When Brittany arrived, she immediately hugged Ashley. "Oh my God, what happened?" she asked, stepping into the apartment and looking around as if expecting to see signs of a disaster. Ashley led her friend to the living room, sat her on the couch, and told her everything about John's strange behavior, his ultimatum, and the breakup. Brittany listened without interrupting, only occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. "You know," Brittany finally said, "you always had doubts about his mother. You used to joke that she was testing whether you were worthy of her little boy." "Yeah," Ashley said with a sad smile. "But it turned out she was testing how financially advantageous I was. And apparently, John was completely under her influence." "Honestly, I always thought he was too obedient," Brittany remarked. "Like a mama's boy who never contradicts anyone." "I noticed that," Ashley admitted. "But I thought he just really respected his mother and cared for her. I thought that was a good quality. If a man treats his mother well, he will treat his wife well too." "Theory doesn't always work in practice," Brittany noted philosophically. "Especially with such controlling people. He's always so quiet, so inconspicuous. Yeah, Gregory almost never expresses his own opinion. He always agrees with his wife. Maybe that's the point. John grew up in a family where the mother commands and the father obeys. And now he thinks that's normal. Only in your case, something went wrong," Brittany smirked. "You weren't ready to obey." "Thank God," Ashley said firmly. "Imagine if I had agreed, transferred the apartment to him, and spent my whole life living under my mother-in-law's rules." Brittany shrugged. "I don't even want to imagine what a nightmare." "You did absolutely the right thing, my friend," Ashley nodded. "Although, of course, the timing was perfect. A day before the wedding, I think it was deliberate. They hoped that in such a situation I wouldn't be able to refuse. Too much was at stake: money, reputation, guests' expectations." "But you turned out to be stronger than they thought," Brittany smiled. "And you know what? I'm proud of you. Not every woman could find the strength to cancel her dream wedding for the sake of principle." "Thank you," Ashley gave a faint smile in response. "Although now it feels like it wasn't even my dream wedding. I just thought John was the right person, but it turned out I didn't know him at all." They were silent for a while, each lost in her own thoughts. Then Brittany stood up decisively. "Okay, now let's get down to business. What needs to be done first?" Ashley showed her the lists. "We need to call everyone, inform them about the cancellation, and cancel the bookings, the restaurant, the photographer, the MC. Let's divide the tasks," Brittany suggested. I'll handle the organizational stuff, call the restaurant, notify all the vendors, and you focus on family and close friends. They should hear the news from you personally. Thank you, Ashley said gratefully. I don't know how I would have managed all this alone. That's what friends are for, Brittany replied simply. By the way, have you called your parents yet? No, Ashley shook her head. I wanted to tell you first. I'll call Mom now. She took out her phone and dialed her mother's number, feeling her heart race with anxiety. How could she explain to her parents that the wedding they had been preparing for was suddenly canceled? Hello? Sweetie. Her mother's cheerful voice made Ashley's heart tighten. How's the mood before the big day? Ashley took a deep breath. I need to tell you something. There won't be a wedding. John and I have broken up. There was stunned silence on the other end. Mom, are you there? Yes, I'm here. Her mother's voice sounded confused. Ashley, what happened? You were such a perfect couple. It's a long story, Ashley said. To put it briefly, John demanded that I transfer the apartment to him, or there would be no wedding. What? Her mother exclaimed. That can't be. He always seemed so decent. I thought so too, Ashley said bitterly, with a wry smile. But this morning he made that demand, citing a family tradition that a man must own all the property in the family. Oh my, her mother was clearly shocked. And what did you do? Of course, I refused, Ashley said firmly. I'm not going to give up an apartment I bought with my own hard work just because some archaic tradition says a woman must have no rights. You did the right thing, her mother said unexpectedly firmly. If I were in your place, I'd have done the same. And what about him? Ashley asked. What did he say? Her mother exclaimed. That there wouldn't be a wedding. He packed his things and left. Lord, her mother sighed heavily. Your father and I thought he was such a good guy, that he loved you, and it turns out all this time he had his eyes on your apartment. I don't know. Was it like that from the start? Ashley said honestly. Maybe his mother set this up. She called him yesterday, and he came up with this demand this morning. Oh, that Dolores, her mother's voice was full of indignation. I always felt something was off about her. She's way too controlling. And she was always looking at you, evaluating you somehow. Don't worry, sweetie, her mother said. Your father and I will support you. I'll call him now, explain everything, and then we'll come to you, okay? Mom, please, don't come today. I need time to process everything. And besides, Brittany and I have so many things to cancel. Of course, darling, her mother agreed immediately. Whatever you say. But if you need anything, call us right away. Your father and I will be there. Thank you, Mom. Ashley felt tears welling up in her eyes. I'll call in the evening. All right. After talking to her mother, Ashley felt a little better. The support of family and loved ones gave her strength to cope with the situation. The next few hours she and Brittany spent on phone calls, canceling orders, informing guests, explaining the situation. To their surprise, almost everyone was understanding. The restaurant agreed to refund half of the deposit, the photographer recalculated the advance for a future shoot, and the host, upon hearing the reason for the cancellation, refused any compensation at all, saying Ashley had acted wisely and bravely. By evening, the main tasks were done, and Ashley, physically and emotionally exhausted, collapsed onto the couch next to Brittany. I can't believe we got everything done, she exhaled. Thank you so much, Brittany smiled. You know, I think you were really lucky. Lucky? Ashley was surprised. How so? Lucky that you found out John's true nature before the wedding, not after. Imagine if you had married him and then he made this demand. Or worse, forced you to sell the apartment for the supposed good of the family, and the money would go to some business run by his mother. Ashley thought about it. Indeed, that would have been much worse. Now she lost time, money, and a relationship, but she preserved her freedom of choice and independence. "You're right," she said. "I should finally be grateful to fate that everything came to light now, at this moment." At that moment, her phone rang. The name Dolores appeared on the screen. Ashley showed the screen to Brittany, who rolled her eyes and shook her head. "Don't answer," her friend advised. "She won't say anything good." But after a brief hesitation, Ashley answered. She wanted to put an end to this story. "Hello," she said calmly. "So, satisfied?" Dolores's voice dripped with venom. "You've destroyed a family that hadn't even had a chance to form." "I'm not destroying anything," Ashley replied just as calmly. "I simply refuse to give up my apartment." "But you could have agreed," the woman persisted. "Oh, what a price for happiness with my son." Ashley said firmly. "Happiness shouldn't come at such a cost. True love doesn't demand material sacrifices." "Oh, such lofty words," Dolores snorted. "Love, happiness in reality, you're just a selfish woman thinking only about your wallet." Ashley felt her patience wearing thin. "May I ask, why did you decide that you have the right to demand my property?" The question clearly caught the woman off guard. After a pause, she replied, "In our family, the tradition." "And who established this tradition, and when?" Ashley interrupted. "Well, it has always been this way. The man is the head of the family, he must control everything." "I see," Ashley said. "So in reality, there is no ancient tradition. You just wanted to get my apartment for your son. You know what? I'm glad everything came to light now, not after the wedding. And I'm grateful to you for showing the true face of your family." "How dare you?" Dolores interrupted her. "All the best," Ashley replied and hung up. Brittany looked at her friend with admiration. "Wow, you really went for it," she said. "I would have said so much to her." "No need to stoop to her level," Ashley shrugged. "It's enough that I've understood everything about her and her son." A week passed. Life gradually returned to normal. Ashley went back to work, met with friends, and sorted through John's belongings left in the apartment. He called several times in the first days after the breakup, sometimes begging her to come back, promising to forget about the apartment, sometimes threatening, sometimes trying to evoke pity. But Ashley remained steadfast. Now that she had seen his true nature, there was no turning back. One evening, while sorting through a drawer of documents, Ashley came across the property ownership certificate for the apartment. She stared at the document for a long time, remembering what it had cost her to save for the down payment, how she economized on everything to pay the mortgage, and how happy she had been when she got the keys. Her thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. "Sweetheart?" Her mother's voice sounded warm and caring. "Everything okay?" "Mom," Ashley replied with a smile. "I'm going through some documents and found the certificate for the apartment. You know, I suddenly realized that I would have been giving John not just a document, but a part of my life, my work, my independence." "You did the right thing," her mother said confidently. "True love doesn't require such sacrifices. It's built on respect and support, not demands and conditions." "Thank you, Mom." Ashley felt tears of gratitude welling in her eyes. "You know, I think in the end I haven't lost anything. I've gained experience, wisdom, understanding." "And what else?" her mother added. "You preserved yourself," her mother said. "Your dignity, your independence. And that is priceless." After the conversation with her mother, Ashley went to the window and looked out at the evening city. She felt a strange mix of sadness and calm. Yes, she had lost the person she thought she loved. Yes, she had to endure humiliation and disappointment. But she had preserved something far more important, self-respect and the belief that true love doesn't demand sacrificing oneself or one's property. The phone in her hand rang again. The name John appeared on the screen. Ashley stared at the screen for a few seconds, then decisively pressed block contact and placed the phone on the windowsill. This chapter of her life was closed. Ahead lay something new, without John, but with the lessons she had learned from this story. Ashley once again glanced around her apartment, cozy, bright, full of memories of the effort she had put in to get it. This was her space, her fortress, her achievement. And no tradition could make her give it up. "Thank you, John," she thought with a touch of irony. "You've shown me not only the happy moments we shared, but also the importance of mutual respect, acknowledging others' achievements, and the readiness to build a future together rather than at someone else's expense." Outside, the rain began to fall, but inside Ashley, a clear sense of peace had settled. She knew she had made the right choice and was ready to move forward, stronger, wiser, and more confident in her values. The price of tradition had been too high, but the value of self-respect and dignity was even higher.